All right, here we go. OverDrive, off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker. Brian Hayes, soon to be the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles, McLennan. How we feeling on a mail-it-in Friday?
I'm ready. I'm ready for the week to be over. I don't know how you feel. I've been just, calling games back and forth, all that. Plus, the weather sucks. It's not as bad. Now, I will say this. It's not as bad today. Went and picked the kids up from the school. It's a little windy, a little chilly. Talk to my friends in Alberta.
Ooh.
I don't know what you're seeing. Minus
Wild.
41.
Wild what's happening. This is what bothers me, too, about the weather systems and the weather reporters in the United States, is they blame us, right? I've seen it already because they're calling for it in Kansas City. Everyone's bracing for that game. And they're like, there's a serious wind chill coming through Canada, as if we personally created this cold weather.
Sending it down.
Yeah, we're sending it to jam up, Patrick Mahomes and Tua. And obviously at Buffalo, they're calling for it too, right? Crazy amounts of snow over the weekend and into Sunday. And you're right. I mean, I guess sometimes you do hear an Arctic wind chill, or I can't remember. There's a phrase they're constantly using. Right. And sometimes they will kind of exclude Canada in that. Right. But a lot of times the Americans are just blaming us, right? We're exporting cold weather.
It wasn't that long ago. And I do remember where the Jets were kind of going through a bit of a funk as a team. And then do you remember it was minus 47 or something?
Yes.
And they said it was the coldest place on earth.
Right.
Which is, it kind of compounded what was going on with the team. And this was a couple of years ago because the team is flying right now. They don't lose. But I'm just saying, I remember thinking, it wasn't bad enough. The team was struggling. Now they get the kick in the junk with the weather.
Right.
I'm seeing it. I mean, it's awful.
It's wild out there, man. It is a wind chill, and it's snapping, through the West Coast and through the Midwest. And it's making its way here. It's going to cool down a little bit here. It's supposed to snow a lot, tonight and again throughout the weekend. And I love it for football. I love crazy weather games. Right. I know it takes away from what we generally see in modern football. If you had a completely healthy Kansas City Chiefs versus a completely healthy Miami Dolphins, and it was, 20 degrees out or 70 degrees Fahrenheit, you'd be thinking this could be 41-35. You'd be thinking this could get crazy. What are these two coaches going to cook up? What are the quarterbacks going to do? I wouldn't be shocked if it was 13-10. And I know that, again, a lot of people might want to see that offense, but we get that all the time. We get crazy offense in football. I think you'll see it in the Dome on Sunday night when Detroit and the Rams play. I think the Cowboys and Packer game could be 41-35.
Right.
But I like how crazy it looks, how cold these guys look. Watching certain lunatic players warm up with no shirt on, even though it's minus 30. And you're going to see that in Kansas City. You're going to see it in Buffalo. I know it's crazy for fans. It's tough to get in there. It's tough to get out. The tailgating takes a bit of a hit. But this will test how much you love going to the stadium, man, and how much you love your team on Saturday night and into Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, there'll be a bunch of booze bags on with just a T-shirt and all of that, which is fine. Go ahead. Was it Buffalo? What was that awful game with was it 3-0 or 7-3 or something, that blizzard game, where guys were falling all over the field in Buffalo? That was although I couldn't stop watching it. It was
That's
just
what
a
I'm
weird
saying,
game.
Noodles. Yeah, I think LaShawn McCoy scored to make it 7-3 or 7-6 or something like that.
Yeah, it was low scoring.
And I don't believe that was a playoff game.
No.
And obviously the playoffs are a little bit different, but last year the Miami-Buffalo playoff game, I believe, was pretty wild. And the Bills have had countless examples of this over the years, crazy snowstorms where they have to call in people, just regular citizens, to come down and help out to shovel, just to get the teams in, to get the fans in, to get security and the refs and broadcasters. But you can't take your eyes away from it. Because it's so uniquely football. And it is kind of wild that this is the weather you get for the most important games. It's the biggest game of the year. for all of these teams.
NFL can't be happy, though. They can't be happy going like, this is our biggest platform. These are the most important games, and it's going to be minus 35 or whatever. And
it's not ideal. It's not like that type of wind chill and that type of cold. Like that's really dangerous is what it is. If it's that cold, it's actually the players will be fired. You know what it's like. You've played outdoors. Your heart rate gets going. The players will be fine. They'll have heaters. They'll have jackets, parkas. It's the fans that are up in the stands and have been there for hours that you concern yourself with. But I guess, you could talk to the NFL and ask them why they approved the Bills building a new stadium that doesn't have a roof in the future. They're going to build a stadium and have all the same problems.
You know my argument. I don't like the outdoors and bugs and everything. Everything should be domed up. Or at least have a retractable roof. So in a situation like this where it's like we're closing the roof, and we're going to pump a bunch of heat in here. We're going to have nice grass or AstroTurf, whatever you've got, and away we go. And then we're not worried about, snow and fans digging you out and people dying potentially, hypothermia on the sidelines. Like, it's just, I hate that stuff. But again, it is the elements. We can't blame it on anything. And the one thing is both teams have to go through it.
That's right.
That's right. There's no competitive advantage here. Both teams have to live that.
Right. And I love watching the coaching staffs, because coaches, especially in football, they try to look tough, act tough. They want to look as if they don't care about the elements. But some coaches historically have just not been able to shy away from the reality that they're freezing and they're uncomfortable and they don't want to be there. And I want to see, who is that going to be this weekend? I have a sneaking suspicion. Like, I'm looking at Mike McDaniel. I'm like, that guy screams South Beach now. You know, he's not going to be able to wear a T-shirt and track pants or whatever. He will be uncomfortable. But, what is Andy Reid rocking? Is he just rocking a hoodie? Or is he in a full parka with a hat?
He's in a full parka
Gotta be.
with a hat. Do you remember during COVID? Like, he had the face mask on, which was, I know that was the that
was the protocol at that point.
I know, but still. People
couldn't see a thing. Had no idea.
It was all fogged up. It was some of the greatest memes out there where they had Mahomes drawing X and O's in the thing. There were so many great memes with the Andy Reid visor that was all fogged up. But I don't think he's a guy that has too big of an ego. Like, he's going to wear a big parka and be comfortable on the sidelines because he's going to try. He has to coach the hell out of that team, to try and win. Right?
Absolutely, it's no different. Sean McDermott, Mike Tomlin, they're coming up. Like, they're used to weather. If you're a coach of the Buffalo Bills, the Pittsburgh Steelers, those are outdoor stadiums. It gets cold, but preparing for snow is one thing. Preparing for a polar vortex is a completely different story.
It's ridiculous.
And this is what you get in the NFL. This is what you get with football. There's no changing it. We see with the Grey Cup all the time. When the Grey Cup's being hosted in Winnipeg or in Edmonton, there is a chance it's going to be minus 15 and snowing in late November. Like, it is, what are you going to move the Grey Cup? No, that's when it is. Like, you book it years in advance. You buy tickets. People come in. Because I've seen some people almost petitioning for the idea that you move the games. There's no moving the game. Unless there's such a big snowstorm where you literally can't play on the field. If the field is available to be played on and you can get people in there, you play the game. And that's exactly what's going to happen this weekend.
Yeah, I just still, there is some frustrating, frustrating
it'll be weird. It'll be a
like,
different vibe, man. It's easy for me to say, Noodles, I'm not going.
Yeah. Same.
I'm not sitting out. Like, the last time I did a big outdoor event would have been probably the Winter Classic, I guess, when it was Leafs Red Wings.
And there was some snow and people were cold
17?
then, but that was only like minus.
It wasn't that bad.
Minus 10, minus 15, maybe.
Not even that cold, Noodles. It wasn't. It was around zero, like at puck drop, and when the sun went down, it was it might have been minus 2, minus 3. It wasn't crazy cold.
Okay. Yeah.
But it was still cold enough to get your attention. You're outside for 3 or 4 hours on New Year's Day. But, the Leafs have a double shot this weekend, too. You got a lot of action cooking
There's
here.
So much cooking. I'm excited to do some couching. I have a little work tomorrow to do. I've got to try and get the Senators back in the winning ways.
Are you calling their game tomorrow, man?
4 o'clock game. 4 o'clock. I've told you this before, Brian, and was it Wednesday I was on after their loss on Tuesday, and I feel like I'm the kiss of death. I've been calling all of these losses, and it's just, they can't get out of their own way. And, last night, I mean, you knew one of these teams were going to dig out last night because Buffalo was pissed and hasn't been great. And, it's Buffalo, Ottawa last night, and it ends up Buffalo up 4-1, and Ottawa makes a game of it, but they lose again. And so, it's a 4:00 game tomorrow. So I'm in and out, call the game, and I'll have, the luxury nowadays to be on your couch kind of afterwards. So I'll be, it'll be great to watch all of these events going on. Keeping an eye on that Leaf game last night. It was a weird. I wanted your reaction on it because Matthews great, get another two. It's just that's an automatic, but it's like, I didn't love Gio's game. I thought Gio struggled.
Yes, he did.
It is what it is. I mean, but. Jones was a little up and down. It was just pockets of the game where it's like, okay, it was a really sloppy game. That's the way I looked at it. I don't know what your impression
Well, the special
of it was.
teams too, right? Like Sheldon went out of his way to say how bad the special teams were. I think we have the clip. Why don't we play it if you missed it after the game last night? And it was really on both. I thought their power play was very disjointed last night, especially in the third. They had opportunities. Yep. And, this is what Sheldon Keefe had to say about that last night after the game.
I thought 5-on-5 we're pretty good in the game. Not perfect, but pretty good, and have a pretty significant advantage in the scoring chances at 5-on-5. But special teams are rotten tonight. Power play, penalty kill, overtime. That cost you games.
Yeah, I mean, I think the power play is going to be fine over time. The issue all year has been the penalty kill. Like the penalty kill, you've got to figure out. Like they hit game 40 and 41 this weekend. You've hit the halfway mark. You're under 2 months away from the trade deadline, and that is something that really becomes even more magnified as you get closer to the playoffs. If you want to go on a long run, you've got to have a great kill. Ideally, you have a very good power play, but you've got to have a penalty kill. You have to have guys you can rely on to go over the boards and put fires out effectively. And it's really been a struggle for them all year. That speaks to, again, Mark Giordano's played a big role on that, for quite some time. TJ Brody, a big role. He's had some issues as well. And they're trying to find the right mix, and they're not getting the job done. And special teams are an issue. 5-on-5 again. I agreed with his assessment. It was a bit choppy on both sides, but it was a pretty fun hockey game altogether. Jones, that was bound to happen. I think at some point, Noodles. Like I didn't think he was awful last night. He didn't give up 4 goals on 16 shots or something. But he's playing a lot of hockey, and I think what Keefe would be most frustrated with, and I think Leaf fans as well, is you get up 3-1 on the road. You're feeling good. You got to find a way to close that out.
You close that out. Yeah. And credit to the Islanders, but then it comes back to the PK. It comes back to clears, 200-foot clears, like the details of the game where, if you get a clear, they don't score that power play goal. I think that's the Horvat goal, the tip. Like, we got it up right there. That's Gio that doesn't get it out.
That's got to get out.
It's got to get out. It ends up in the back of your net. It's unfortunate. These are small details, but, the penalty kill consistently, it hasn't been a dominant force. You're right. I'm not worried about their power play. Like, their power play is creative. They got a lot of talent. They've got really, in essence, they almost have the Edmonton model, although Edmonton's working on having a second power play. But for me, I've noticed that Leaf power play, which they should, their top guys, they'll extend.
They will. They'll stay
It's not a minute. They'll extend to 90 seconds, in which they should get the looks they want, and they can, I think they'll be fine. And plus, they're near the top of the league. I'm not worried about that. The penalty kill, though, is so critical. And yes, you can point to, well, your goalie's got to be your best penalty killer. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But when your goaltender has to face screens, tips, all of that type of stuff, now you start looking at it systematically and say, okay, do we have the right guys to do this? Or are we just in a down little bit of a trend right now? Mm-hmm. Who are the most guys you trust on the kill up front? Is it Marner?
Well, historically, it has been Mitch Marner. I mean, you got David Kampf out there taking draws. Like Matthews doesn't really get a lot of opportunity. They'll sneak Nylander in there from time to time. But Yarncroke. I mean,
I remember at the starting of the year. Do you remember it? Either Sheldon said it or Austin or something said Matthews going to kill penalties. All the top guys do, and then that kind of
just fizzled out, man. It doesn't really happen much. Maybe if he's having a good night at the dot, which again is something that happened in overtime. There, you talk about McCabe and the issues there, but you lose a draw clean in overtime, you're in trouble. and that's what happened. He was on his offside, but and that what's frustrating about overtime is it's so quick. Like, and it does feel like the Leafs. I'd love to get the stats on that. Like, who leads the league for giving up goals on that first shift in overtime? I'd be shocked if there was another team. Like, it just feels like when the Leafs lose an OT, it's like they lose possession
12
early,
seconds in.
and it's boom, it's in the back of the net. And Barzal was flying last night. And what do you have, a goal and 3 assists?
Yeah, he looked good.
He looks good. He's having a really good season. Noah Dobson's having a really good breakout offensive season.
Yeah.
But I mean, listen, if you're the Leafs, the glass half full is you walked out of a tough road game with a point. The glass half empty is you're up 3-1, and what you needed is details to get you home. And those details couldn't come forward for you. And now you got a big weekend. You got Colorado here tomorrow night, and then Detroit on a back-to-back on Sunday. And Detroit hasn't been great recently. In fact, the last month and a half, they've really fallen off, but they're still in the running. They're still a thorn in the side of teams in the Atlantic Division.
You're right. I was looking at them. They haven't gone away, but they're not the Detroit of years past. They're hanging around. I don't know if we all believe they'll make the playoffs, but they're not that far behind. They're kind of hanging in there, getting points. They get a point out of Edmonton. I think it was last night. Yeah, they ended up losing in overtime. But, they're a team that has more skill. They'll test you. It's not a mail-it-in game. This isn't where – remember last year the disparity in the Atlantic, it was you had your top and your bottom, and that was it. Those were, free nights for the most part. That's kind of changed. But Detroit's kind of pushed up on that, and they're hanging around. They play the night before, too. They play at home, I believe, against L.A., so it's going to be – a coin flip. The Leafs are at home both games,
which is a rarity. I don't recall the last time I saw a Saturday, Sunday home sked. Maybe it happens once a year. And tomorrow's a big one. Like, you talk about a duo that rolls through town. If you get McKinnon and McCarr, in your building once a year, that's one you circle. Like,
it's must watch.
It's right up there with McDavid and Draisaitl, and
I agree.
It's a 2-pack where if you have tickets and you're lucky enough to be in the building, you want to place eyes on those two. Because they are rock stars the way they're playing.
And McKinnon's having a Hart season.
Yes, he is.
He's legitimately having a Hart conversation season. There's 5 or 6 guys in the league that are in that conversation. McKinnon is definitely there.
I think this is one of the more rare, halfway point Hart conversations I can recall in a long time, where in previous years it was just a foregone conclusion. Like last year, by this point, you're like, all right, McDavid, like, what do you,
100
what do you,
points or
yeah,
something.
it's like we're not even. There's not even a conversation. It's just that guy's going to run away with it. Does he win it unanimously or not? This year, between Kucherov and McKinnon, I think Elias Pettersson is right there personally. You look at the numbers he's done, especially over the last couple of weeks on the road on the East Coast against good teams. He is torching it every single night.
Superstar.
He is an absolute superstar, Pettersson, and it's a great team. The way they're playing all year, you obviously have him in the mix. I think Nylander could be in the mix. Matthews has to be. He's got 33 goals in 39 games. He's only played in 38. He's got 33 goals in 38 games that he's played. And, there's a number of different guys that you could point to. Pasternak's going to come up as he should. And guys I'm sure I'm missing off the fly off the top of my head.
Even if – does McDavid get –
well, McDavid should. Like, did you see that goal he scored last night? Like, that I did a list last week with Gino about like the most terrifying players to play against, and I had McDavid at number 1, and I don't think it needed a lot of explanation. Yeah. And I can't say, well, I know what it's like to be a defenseman in the NHL, but I remember being on the ice, when I was playing growing up, or you get into the OHL, and there'd be someone coming at you. I don't recall the defenseman who he danced last night, but that's so unfair. For him to have his feet like set and not ready for him, and McDavid to dance him almost like a Lemieux move, and then he went past him like you hit a speed button.
Yeah,
that goal last night. That's probably not in the top 25 of his career. It's probably not in the top 25.
Probably not. But watching it live, I thought it was offside. At first, I was like, "Okay, where'd that puck come?"
That's my point. Don't take that away from me. Last night.
You're right. But my first instinct's like, that's coming back. That was offside because it was almost the McCarr rule. Like, he didn't touch it until they clear it up. Like, and he was already gone. Like, I felt like
flying.
He was halfway in the zone before he touched it and then started moving. And I don't know who it was. I thought it was Walman or somebody that he just turned around. But it couldn't have mattered. It
could have been Bobby Orr in his prime.
Exactly.
You had no chance.
But that was a ridiculous goal. And, Alex Lyon was standing on his head, and even that, like, after the goal, the look on his face, like it was close to being offside. I know.
He's calling for an offside. That's what it was. Yeah, he was blaming. That's why he was standing still.
Well, yeah, exactly. Afterwards, that's one where you go to the bench and you say to the defensive coach, "Go, is that offside?"
Yeah, it wasn't I would have played him better than that. I was waiting for the whistle.
I didn't see. We got to roll it again. Did he put his arm up?
Yeah,
did he actually?
Watch. He knows he's beat, and that's a veteran move. Whoever this guy is deserves, because he's like, I'm beat. Oh.
It was Walman. I think that's 96. Yeah, Jake Walman.
Yeah.
He's like, what is going on here? He was waiting for the whistle to go, and McDavid's already put it in the net.
It's already in.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Doug.
That's such a veteran move. Like, I'm toast. I can't. My feet are standing still, and this guy's flying.
He's actually turning out. Like, his feet are turning to the outside. McDavid's inside, and that's where he puts his hand up, going like, what are we dealing with here? Yeah, that was a ridiculous goal.
Well, because if you look, like, he looks like he's coming this way, and then boom, and Walman's like, offside. That's a men's league move. Like, that's honestly a men's league move where you're calling a phantom offside at 11:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. There's no refs. That's how brawls start. That's literally how brawls start, because in men's league, the guy starts calling offside, and the other guy's like, there's no offside. It's men. What are you talking about? And then he got embarrassed, and he's freaking.
You're right. That is a fist fight for sure. But I just watching it, like, I was like, okay, that looked offside. And then you got to. That's the part that sucks about all this, because now you watch it 20 different times. You get the interpretation, all of that. I'm glad Detroit didn't challenge it. Like, I'm glad, like,
let
they
it
just
go
kind of
in.
let
That's
it go.
a great
it's like,
goal.
Okay, good goal.
Your fans paid to see that guy come play. Do not steal that. That was a part of my issue, and I get it. The coach is going to call it. That's in the rule book, so you're allowed to challenge. It's not. I have nothing against if Lalonde did it last night. Richardson did it a couple of nights ago. But the other night in Chicago, that's Draisaitl to McDavid to Hyman tic-tac-toe. Like, that's, if you're a kid and you leave that building, you're like, I just saw something really cool. And instead, 6-minute review and all that, and then they take it away. And last night, the same thing. You could, if you go down to the Joe, and I get it, you're a Red Wing fan. I understand that. But the idea of seeing McDavid put on a clinic and score a goal like that.
Like dancing.
You want to be able, that's when you say, I want to see him score. And I like, as a kid, I remember that. I remember that when I was a kid, I get to go and watch, Lemieux was in town or Gretzky's in town. You want to see him do something. And McDavid's the same way. And, like, tomorrow's probably an example of that, too. You want to see McKinnon, Makar, ideally with a Leaf win, right? Leafs win 5-3 if you're a Leaf fan. McKinnon has 2 points. Makar's got 3. And you got the best of both worlds. All right, Craig Berube is coming up. Craig will join us. Former teammate of yours, I believe.
Yes. I played with him in Calgary. He's awesome. One of the best teammates I've ever had. And obviously Stanley Cup winning coach and free agent. So I wonder what he's up to, just kind of
former
chilling.
Leaf, too. He was in the Dougie Gilmore trade.
I forgot. I guarantee you this guy, I mean, I'm sure he's chilling, but I'd be shocked if his phone isn't ringing just to see, like, a couple teams like you up type of thing, like just to see what's shaking. Like, I know he's under contract, I think, for the rest of this year, but, like, there'd be a few teams with their hands up going, we could probably use you right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, he had a great run in St. Louis, man.
Awesome.
We'll get into his run there. We'll get into, when he first took over, what they did in 2019. Craig Berube is coming up. Mike Johnson later this afternoon. Leafs coming off a 4-3 loss in overtime last night. The Raptors are back in action tonight in Utah, and Chris Haynes is reporting that the Raptors and Siakam are coming to an end. It seems like that is a league-wide acceptance that at some point Pascal's going to be traded. So keep our eye on that. We'll get into it. And, of course, we're looking ahead to the weekend. I know a lot of people still wondering who picked what. Timo and Wilson versus Hazenbrough. We'll have a full recap, the full FanDuel odds and the spreads and the lines. And we get a lot cooking this afternoon.
All right.
Noodles in here. I'm Bryan Hayes. OverDrive continues, TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. Drive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. We might do a little NHL, NFL mashup a little bit later, Noodles.
Yeah.
Look at future odds, on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. More likely to win a championship this year, the Cowboys or the Maple Leafs. You look at a number of different things, the Chiefs or the Vegas Golden Knights. There's a number of different mashups, and we'll have a top 5 list as well, because as of Sunday night, the Leafs will have played 41 games halfway through the season. So we're We're going to have a 5-pack of storylines that we've touched on a fair amount over the course of those, 41 games, or soon to be 41 games. And Craig Berube coming up here in a moment. We keep talking about the weather. Craig is from Callahoo, Alberta. I'm sure you're aware of that.
Just
Callahoo.
right by St. Albert, Alberta. Yep.
Yeah.
Callahoo.
So he'd be aware of this type of weather. I'm sure he played out in the lakes and the rivers and the whole nine, right? Things would freeze over in like October probably out there.
Big time. And you go out there and there are times you play in minor hockey. You play them like you're fighting for your life getting off there.
You'd be circling like when we played
Indigenous
Callahoo.
land, man. They play for keeps. I'm telling you. And like I say, Callahoo, Enoch, you name it, all of the places, Kainai, all the places that I played in, Hobbema, in Alberta, like all of these Indigenous reserves, like I'm telling you, like it is gritty.
Yeah.
And I don't mind it. Like I say,
the Callahoo flu. A couple guys have the Callahoo flu at times. I don't think I'll make it tonight.
You do not want to mess around. Tough as nails. The people from Callahoo, they are pretty gritty. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, pretty gritty, pretty tough, pretty successful too, right?
Yes.
Cup champs and longtime NHLers, former Leaf. Here he is back on OverDrive. Here's Craig Berube. How you doing, Craig?
Good, guys. How are you?
We're doing well. We're just talking about kids in minor hockey and junior getting the Callahoo flu when they had to play you guys. Do you remember that?
I don't know if I remember that. The Callahoo flu, that was pretty good.
Yeah. Noodles, I think, had it a few times, although you were in net, right, Noodles? So
I would,
Well, he's the goalie.
Yeah.
He's always sick.
Well, you go into Enoch, you go to Callahoo, some of those places, you're fighting for your life to get out. Hobbema, and you played tier 2 there. There were some tough places.
I know.
That you don't mess around.
There's a few tough spots back in the day going into playing. It was could get a little wild at times.
Absolutely. Well, it's great to have you on here. I mean, I mentioned, former Leaf. You were obviously a part of that 10-player deal. I'm sure you've been asked about it a lot over the last 30 years, but I think the anniversary was only like a couple of weeks ago or a week ago. Do you remember what that was like, being involved in a 10-player trade going from Toronto back to Calgary?
Yeah, it was. I wasn't happy about it, that's for sure, because I loved Toronto and loved playing there. And, we weren't a good team, but, for me individually, personally, it was going well for me, and I really enjoyed it here. So when I heard the news, it was upsetting at first. And it's like, you get on the plane the next day and you're flying out with 5 guys and 5 guys coming. That's a big.
Oh, I think we might have lost Craig. We'll see if we can get him back.
Well,
a lot of technical issues going on right now. Yeah, I don't know.
No, I think
that was his phone. I think it sounds like he's on a landline too, which sometimes the landlines have a bigger issue than cell phones.
Because nobody uses them anymore. That's the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Landlines, like I have a landline in this house, but I don't have a phone plugged into it.
Right.
But I tried to plug in one time. I had more problems with that because cordless phones, you forget to charge, all of that type of stuff. So I don't even mess with them now. But yeah,
we'll get him back on.
I think about playing with him though. And that's why I want to get to eventually in the conversation how the game has changed because, he's had some legendary scraps. He was a well-known guy. Like there was, I don't know, you could probably YouTube, or you definitely can YouTube it, where he was in the penalty box and it was Anaheim, Calgary, and they had a legendary brawl. And this is where you could chip the puck over the glass to get the face-off and the whistle.
Right.
And Craig was in the penalty box, and Dave Lowry flipped it over the glass, so they got the whistle. And Craig came out, and Greg Gilbert just pointed on the ice that he didn't. He just stay on.
Yeah.
And he was chasing Jeff Friesen around the ice, right off the draw. It was an ugly brawl. I think only 2 guys ended up on each bench by the end, and I think it was a regular season game. It wasn't anything to write home about, but it was Anaheim, Calgary, and all hell broke loose, and Craig Berube is chasing Jeff Friesen around the ice.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen that, and you're right. That's one that people forget how often if you needed a breather, you just flip it right over the glass.
That used to be the play. I mean, the defenseman, stay-at-home defenseman, just turn and fire it over the glass.
Yeah, I need a break. Boom. See you later. And yeah, if there were fights or whatever, you're like, that guy, the time's up. We got to get him back on the ice or back on the bench.
Yeah.
Flip it right over, and the opponent knows exactly what's coming. So yeah, we'll see if we can get Craig back. But I'm pretty sure that 10-team or that 10-player deal, that anniversary was, because I remember Dougie Gilmour tweeting about it. I think it was last week or earlier this week.
Wow.
That happened. So I believe we have Craig back. Do you have us, Craig?
Hey, guys. How are you?
Yeah, good. No problem. Craig Berube joining us. Noodles was just telling a story about when – go ahead, Noodles. You guys were teammates back in Calgary.
But do you remember the brawl against Anaheim? Were you in the penalty box and Dave Lowry just chipped it over the glass and Greg Gilbert told you to go on? And was it Jeff Friesen that you ended up chasing around the ice?
Yeah, he's fast. It took me a while to catch him. Anyway, that was pretty funny because I guess there had to be a whistle for me to get out of the box or something. I can't remember. And Dave Lowry, he realized that, and he just chucked the puck in the stands to get a whistle, and I got on the ice. But it was funny because I looked over at the bench just before that, and there was like 3 guys on the bench, and one of them was Mark Savard. I go, it figures Savvy would still be on the bench.
With Craig Berube, and obviously, you had such a good run in St. Louis, and you played in the era you played in, and then now you've coached in more of a modern era. I'm curious how you're watching the game these days. Like, do you watch it as a former player or as a former coach? And is there any difference in terms of those viewing experiences when you're sitting back watching hockey on a night like tonight?
Yeah, I try to tune in almost nightly and just watch certain teams and games and things like that. I think I watch them as a coach and as a fan. I really enjoy watching the game. And it's not always I'm sitting there, watching the game as a coach, but I'm also watching for things I'm trying to learn too and see what teams are doing, and you get a little bit closer. You're so focused on your.
We are going to have a problem here because this phone, I don't know what to do because it's Craig Berube and he might. I start chirping his phone and I run into him.
He'll crawl through that line and attack you.
Like, I have to completely change my position and say it's all good. I have no issues with
no, not at all.
Reception. What are you going to do?
If he drops 10 times, you will take it and
Craig
smile.
Berube.
No, you will take it and smile because I don't know what's happening here, but it might just be the connection. It could be the connection for him into our station, which there has been a few of those gong shows.
Nothing we can do.
But I'm curious as to what he was going to say about that, watching teams and what they're up to, because I would argue that he's probably sitting there watching teams that are having tremendous success and then teams that are struggling that might be, in the market for a change.
At some point.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And you could get that phone call overnight, and all of a sudden he goes, somebody calls you and go, we'd like to interview you. You got to know that team. You got to figure out, because they're going to ask you point blank, what are you going to do to help this team? So you're going to have to know the league, know the team, know the system that you'd like to play with those particular players.
Absolutely.
It's interesting. And I'll be honest, I call Ottawa games every night. But, Jacques Martin's come in. He's the new coach. But he's 71 years old. I'm not sure if he's going to be there for 10 years. There might be another play after this, whether it's the rest of this season or this summer or next season. A guy like Craig Berube would probably be on the list to take a look at to help a young team to get to that next level.
I think it's the highest priority for Ottawa.
Yeah.
I think it's the highest priority to get the right coach. I think Berube would be a great example of that. I'm sure there's a couple of other guys.
Yeah,
and it doesn't mean that there isn't, a guy that's in the American Hockey League or whatever that wouldn't also have the right touch. But for me, we were discussing that earlier in the week with Ottawa and with Mark Mathot about what needs to happen, what could happen, and saw Shane Pinto was back with the team, and he's, speaking to the media today, and he's going to get back into the lineup. But I think it's imperative they get a coach that implements a culture and a system. Like, they're still at that point of this rebuild and retool. You've got talent, you've got youth, you've got players, you've got somewhat of a mixture of veterans, although I wonder if they're going to move off a couple of those guys. But it's like they missed the step of you got to have the right culture in place. And that's not to say DJ Smith wasn't knocking on the right notes or knocking on the right doors, but it just eventually got away from him right?
Yeah.
Or he was there too early and the message got a little bit dry by the end.
And that's that's what Craig was able to do in St. Louis. They came in, they were underperforming, and he comes in and his brand of style of coaching with accountability attached to it, and they just went on a ridiculous run and won the Stanley Cup.
Cup.
It's legendary.
Yep, it really is. We'll try it again. Here he is, Craig Berube. You got us, Craig.
Hey guys. I don't know what's going on with the phones.
It's all good. It could be our issue too. Believe me, it's happened before. It won't be the last time. Noodles just mentioned that Blues run, which really is historic, considering it was around this time you got the gig. I believe you guys were a bottom 5 team, and you go on a magical cup run. What was it that you think you personally brought to that team that allowed them to flourish the way that they did?
Yeah, I think, when I took over, it was probably towards the end of November. I think that we made some trades that summer. I think we got O'Reilly, Bozak. We had some new people come in. I think that there was just a little bit of a role issue going on. I didn't think, that everybody was accepting of the roles or even identified what the role should be on the team. I think once we got that straightened out, we just started to play some real good hockey and got going in the right direction. But we were missing a goalie. We only had Jake Allen, really, and we were missing a goalie. And Binnington came in January, so we had a real good 1-2 punch, and Binner went on a real good roll there. But, we played a solid brand of hockey. I mean, we didn't have superstars on our team.
Okay, that's got to be it, man. Doogie, you've got to you let him know that that's the end of the road.
No, Doogie say Brian Hayes is furious with him.
And say, my name is Josh. I go by Doogie, and I will challenge you at any point to discuss this.
Me and JP will nose to nose you, fight you. Like
next time you're in town, I want to meet you. And what are you going to do? It happens.
I've got some amazing story. I really wanted to bring up this one near the end. I was going to say before we get you out of here, do you remember this one? I don't know. I think I've told you guys the story on air. With Struddy. Because, as you know, Struddy's one of my best friends. Struddy's playing for Chicago. Struddy's cousin is Rob and Scott Niedermayer. So
right.
Craig is playing on Calgary with me and Rob Niedermayer. And in the first period, I'm sitting beside Rob Niedermayer on the bench. And Struddy and Craig start fighting right in front of us. And Rob leans over and goes, "Go Struddy." And we start laughing. And so they fight. It's a good fight. And after the first period, we go into the dressing room and he comes right over and he's like, "I heard you pigeons cheering for Struddy." And he's like yelling at us. And he's so funny. He's such I was going to bring that story up because that's I swear amazing. He would remember it. Because we all went out for, I think, dinner or beers afterwards or whatever. Because, that's what you did back then. But it was so funny because it was just such a random situation, and Struddy and Craig were fighting toe to toe right in front of us. Man. And of course, Rob Niedermayer, big smart ass, leans over and goes, "Go Struddy."
Struddy.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. But
he had some great stuff. Like you talk about YouTube. I remember looking up a Craig Berube clip where I want to say he fought Probert, and something happened where he was not happy, and you could see even Probert was like, "Oh my God, what have I got into here?" And when Probert has a face on like that, some guy means business.
I want to say, I'm not sure when the throat slash gesture got outlawed in the NHL, but I swear I've seen him do that.
I think who did that to O? Someone did it to O. I don't think it was Craig, but it was.
I think it was.
It
actually.
might have been Berube that did it to O at one point.
Because wasn't it Gary Roberts that said Craig Berube's mad at you or something to O?
Exactly.
And he looked over and he's giving him the throat slash symbol. I think you just take your gear off at that point.
Yeah.
You don't even bother.
I don't want to be doing this anymore. Anyway. We'll get Craig on again in the future, and I'm sure he'll get behind a bench real soon. I would have to believe this upcoming offseason, if not before that, Craig Berube will be back in the game.
Yeah, I honestly,
he had a great run in St. Louis.
I think he would probably have an opportunity to get on a bench right now, but if I was him, I'd sit back and go, I need the right situation.
Yep.
Because now he's won. Now, you might want some stability, but, if you're a coach that's in high demand, you don't just jump back in. Right? You want the situation that you believe you can get to the end and get some success. I mean, I know people want to kick the guy in the junk, but Mike Babcock had options at that time. Buffalo was all over him. The Leafs were all over him. I'm sure there were other teams, but he chose the Leafs. And Leafs paid him a boatload of money. And, he knew there was going to be a rebuild. He knew there was going to be some pain before they got to the next level. But I think Berube's kind of in that ilk where it's like he's really coveted. So I think there would be some teams that might be looking at him, but he's got to choose the right setting for him.
He might as well. Like, how often do you get that opportunity where you're sought after, you got money coming in still from your previous employer, and that there's going to be teams that are seeking you out, and we're seeing it in the NFL right now. Like, the Bill Belichick conversation is fascinating to me. How many teams really want him? How many teams feel like I don't think money would be an issue. You'd have to pay him clearly. But I don't think it's like I don't have the money to pay a Bill Belichick, where that can happen in other sports. Like in the NHL, some coaches just get outpriced, right? Like some markets are like, we're not paying you $3 million, $4 million.
$3 to $5 million, whatever guys are making. Yeah.
In the NFL, it generally doesn't work that way. It's more so, can you stomach the Bill Belichick way with the hopes that you'll get the Bill Belichick payoff, which is great success and a well-run organization. So, because you look at New England, like clearly it was Bill is out and he gets his day, and Gerard Mayo is in the next day. Like that's the whole mutual parting of ways was not accurate. Bill was told you're out, Mayo's coming in.
Did that surprise you though? That move,
he had been connected to that job for weeks, Noodles, if not months.
Okay.
And I guess I'm not, because that is the way that Robert Kraft is operated. Like, we had Ben Volin on of the Boston Globe yesterday, and he said even the Belichick hire, he had been familiar with Kraft. He had worked with Kraft in the past. And I'm curious to see what Mayo's got. I think that's a really tough spot to follow up a legend like that. Like, it's really a difficult job to fill, because you're following Bill Belichick. The guy's going to have a statue outside the stadium. Yeah. And you got to step in, and he's 37, right? Yeah. He was a great player, and I don't know what kind of coach he's been. I presume he's been a very good coach, and obviously is a guy that Kraft really has time for and respect for. But I was kind of thinking there was a chance they were going to completely wipe out the Belichick era, and Gerard Mayo was a Bill Belichick guy. Yeah. So we'll see.
But we'll see how it unfolds. But it just, for me, I thought it was a bit surprising, like just, how quickly the transaction went down, because I just thought you get it to the end, you just maybe in the off season, you just let everything settle after the Super Bowl, and it's kind of an exchange that happens at that point. But that's not the case whatsoever. It's like, that's it. You're done. Move on.
Well, that's a good point. With Mayo being the guy, he would have known he was the guy. Right. You could have let it breathe at least for a weekend.
Yeah,
right.
I don't know.
It was a quick, like, Bill, you're out, and now Gerard's in. Yeah. And, it was a quick turnaround. Yeah. We mentioned the weather down in Buffalo. I guess the Bills' official Twitter account just tweeted out a picture of the snow on the ground, or what they're anticipating, and tweeted out asking for help. So, we're going to need some shovelers to get Highmark Stadium ready for Sunday. How can you help? And they posted a link to how people can sign up. So they're basically saying, if we want to have the biggest game of the year, we need people to come help us. That is pretty wild.
Are they handing out tickets? Like, that would be something cool. They'd be like, you come shovel, like you'll have a standing room ticket for the game.
That would be really cool. I believe they pay people. I'm pretty sure they pay them like $10 an hour or something like that.
That's fair, I guess, but still, I'd
rather tickets. Exactly. Yeah, you tell me I can go to the game and get tickets, and all I have to do is shovel for a few hours. There'd be a lot of people lining up for that. Yeah. That's for sure. All right, Mike Johnson, in about 15 minutes. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, every day this week we've been announcing current and former Maple Leaf players in our Leafs lineup, and we're giving away tickets to see the Leafs play the Jets January 24th, plus throwing in a $250 Vanilla Visa prepaid card with each pair of tickets to make it the ultimate game night. Vanilla Visa prepaid cards are available for purchase at Petro-Canada. Your last player of the week is Alex Steen. Alex Steen. There you go. Phone lines are open. 416-870-1050. 416-870-1050. Alex Steen, your fifth and final player of the week. First one in at 416-870-1050. You're going to see Leafs play a team that never loses, the best team in hockey right now, the Winnipeg Jets.
Wow.
It's wild, the Western teams, man. Like, the Leafs got a point last night, and they're picking up points, and, they're moving in a good direction. But Edmonton, Vancouver, and Winnipeg are literally the three hottest teams in the league for the last month.
Well, Edmonton's won 9 in a row. They won 8 in a row, then lost 3 in a row, then won 9 in a row. So they're 17-3 in their last 20. Winnipeg's won 9 in a row, I think, and Vancouver's won 9 in a row. Like something crazy.
It never stops.
And there's one, and Seattle's won 8 in a row.
Yes.
So it's very interesting how it's unfolding. You mentioned, like, there's teams. It seems like Florida, the Leafs, and Boston get points every night too. Like, it's just, how it's all going to shake out. This Edmonton team's like 3 points behind LA for the third spot in the Pacific.
7 in a row, I believe.
Yeah.
So, like,
crazy.
that is a huge discrepancy. Some of those, I believe, are in overtime or in shootouts. But Edmonton's won 9 in a row. LA's lost 7 in a row. Like, do the math on that. That's a massive swing in like 3 weeks.
I know.
So,
it's crazy.
Yeah, you're right. They both played 38 games. Edmonton's 3 points behind them. So, you handicap that. We should look that up on FanDuel. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Edmonton had better odds to, place in the division than LA did now.
Which would have been unheard of
6
weeks ago.
Yeah.
Literally November would have been unheard of when they were like losing to San Jose and like they were like third in the bottom of the league, I think.
Yeah, they were a mess at that point. All right, hour 2 coming up. Mike Johnson will join us on the Leaf game last night, the Leafs upcoming weekend, other stories around the NHL as well with Johnny. The wild card weekend coming up as well. We'll continue to look ahead to that and the Raptors in Utah tonight. OverDrive continues, TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.